No room for you, orphan. Find a hole and crawl into it.
The door slammed shut with a heavy thud, the sound swallowed immediately by the rising wind.
You knew this would happen. Don't let them see you break.
Samuel pulled his coat tighter and turned from the bunkhouse, the first flakes stinging his face. At his side, Scrap whined and nudged his hand, urging him forward into the storm. The bunkhouse became a gray shadow in the swirling snow, then vanished altogether. Samuel pushed on, one arm raised to shield his face, his breath crystallizing in the air. And then, like a ghost in the white, the haystack materialized before him, a massive, dark tower of packed straw. Inside the bunkhouse, Colt pulled the curtain back and stared into the storm, his expression unreadable. Samuel fixed his eyes on that distant haystack and forced his frozen legs to move, each step sinking deeper into the drift. The hay was frozen solid, but Samuel clawed at the outer stalks until his fingers bled.
Got to dig deep and fast. The storm won't wait. My life depends on this.
He burrowed into the stack, tearing at the compacted straw, widening the opening with his shoulders. Scrap whined and scrambled after him, snow flying from his fur as he squeezed into the dark tunnel. In the pitch black inside, Samuel fumbled for his tin lantern and a precious match. The match flared, then the little wick caught, pushing back the dark with a weak yellow glow. He stuffed loose hay into every crack he could find, packing them tight until the draft stopped. The cramped hollow glowed with lamplight, casting long shadows on the rough walls of straw.
Not warm, but out of the wind. It'll have to do. At least Scrap and I are alive.
Outside, the blizzard screamed without mercy, but inside, for the first time, there was silence.
The cold isn't creeping in. The air is still, and it's warming up little by little.
He found one last gap and packed it tight with snow from the tunnel. Within minutes, the little chamber felt almost comfortable, the packed hay holding the heat like a thick wool blanket. In the bunkhouse, Hank pulled aside the frosty curtain and peered into the storm.
There's a light flickering in the haystack. Looks like the boy made himself a nest.
That fool boy's lit a lamp in the hay. He'll burn himself alive, burrowed in there like a field mouse. Thinks it's a palace.
The other hands chuckled at the joke, but Hank stayed silent, his face troubled as he watched the distant glow. Inside the haystack, Samuel heard nothing of the laughter. He pulled Scrap close and watched the lamp burn steady. The haystack stood silent against the howling wind, a faint yellow glow the only sign of the boy hidden deep within. As the night deepened, the bunkhouse grew treacherous with cold, drafts slicing through every crack.
This stove is useless. I am freezing my hands off, and my teeth won't stop chattering.
Hank pulled his thin blanket tighter, his breath a steady cloud in the air.
I can't feel my fingers anymore. This cold is worse than any winter I remember.
Inside the haystack, Samuel scratched Scrap's ears, the little lamp warming the hollow.
Warm enough and quiet. This hay keeps the cold out better than any plank wall.
Another farmhand cursed and threw more wood on the smoldering fire, but it barely made a difference.
We should have let the boy in just for his body heat. At least we'd have a warm body in this icebox.
Samuel pulled a handful of hay over his legs, the warmth soaking in. Scrap already asleep at his side. While the storm raged outside, Samuel slept soundly, warm in his hidden chamber. As dawn approached, Samuel woke to the howl of wind and a memory rising from deep in his past.
The old man by the fire said it clear. When the cold comes, burrow into a haystack. It's warmer than any house.
The old traveler had shown him a woodcut of figures burrowed into a haystack, smiling, while a blizzard raged.
A haystack isn't just shelter. It's a lifesaver older than these farms, and it's kept me alive tonight.
Outside, the storm thickened into a white wall, so dense the bunkhouse seemed to disappear. Hank pulled the curtain back and stared into the whiteout, his face tightening.
I should go check the livestock. They'll freeze to death in their stalls if this goes on.
You go out in that. You won't come back. Wait it out, Hank.
Hank stared into that wall of white, jaw set, but he didn't move. And through the storm, the faint glow from the haystack still pulsed, a quiet reproach to men who had no answer for the cold. But an hour later, the thought of the livestock freezing to death broke his resolve.
I can't sit here while those animals die. I am going.
You are a fool, Hank. That barn's just a different grave.
Hank pushed the door open and vanished into a wall of white. The wind slammed it shut behind him. Within minutes, Hank was miles from the bunkhouse in his mind, disorientated by the screaming white inside the haystack. Samuel's eyes snapped open. Something had cut through the wind. A faint, desperate yell.
That's no animal. That's a man, and he's in trouble.
Scrap flattened his ears and whined at the tunnel entrance, his body tense.
Going out is suicide. But if I stay here and he dies, I heard what Colt said. I am not supposed to care.
The yell came again, weaker now, barely a ghost on the wind.
The old man also said, a haystack doesn't keep a man warm if his conscience freezes him. I can't let him die.
He grabbed his coat and scrambled toward the tunnel, tearing away the packed hay plug with numb fingers. Scrap barked sharply and shouldered past him, disappearing into the whiteout. Samuel crawled out after him, the wind instantly tearing at his face and coat. The world was a roar of white, no sky, no ground, just freezing chaos.
Where are you? Shout again.
A faint cry answered, weaker than the wind, from somewhere off to the left. Samuel turned and stumbled toward it, arms outstretched, feeling his way through the storm. Scrap barked again, his muzzle pointed at a dark shape just visible in the drift. They plunged toward it, the storm screaming as if to swallow them whole. Samuel fell to his knees beside the dark shape. It was Hank, half buried, his beard caked with ice.
Hank, get up. We have to move.
Hank's eyes fluttered, but he was too cold to speak. Samuel grabbed him under the arms and heaved. The old man was dead weight, the snow sucking at their legs. Samuel pulled, his muscles screaming.
Come on. Move. We're almost there.
Scrap circled them, barking, as Samuel half-dragged, half-rolled Hank toward the haystack, now a dark promise in the white. They crashed through the tunnel entrance, Samuel shoving Hank into the hollow like a heavy sack, then collapsing after him. Inside, the lamplight flickered, revealing Hank's blue lips and frozen hands. Samuel crawled to the entrance to plug it shut.
Stay awake, Hank. Don't you dare die.
The storm howled outside, but the chamber's warmth began to seep back, a fragile barrier against the white death. Samuel worked fast, stripping away Hank's frozen coat and the boots that had become blocks of ice. He pulled the old wool blanket from his pack, his only luxury, and wrapped it tightly around Hank's shoulders.
This blanket has kept me warm on worse nights than this. Keep it close. He needs warmth more than I do. The hay and the lamp will be enough for me.
He broke a piece of stale bread and pressed it into Hank's trembling, frost-bitten hands.
Eat. Even a crumb helps fight the cold from inside.
Hank's blue lips moved, but no words came out. Just a weak, grateful nod.
Stay with me. I didn't drag you through that blizzard just to watch you give up.
Scrap curled tighter against Hank's back, adding his own body heat to the desperate vigil. Outside, the blizzard continued its assault, but inside, the small space held the fragile spark of life. Hank's eyelids fluttered open. He stared at the dim walls, his mind clawing back from the frozen dark.
Where? How am I not dead?
You are inside the haystack. It's shelter. Warmer than that bunkhouse ever was.
Haystack, I can feel my fingers again. This can't be right.
The hay trap's still air. No drafts, no wind stealing the heat. It's like being under a quilt made of straw.
The boy I mocked. He pulled me from the blizzard and wrapped me in his own blanket. You saved my life. After what Colt said, after I stood silent, You still came.
A man once told me that a haystack doesn't keep you warm if your conscience freezes. I couldn't let you die.
Hank closed his eyes, the weight of the boy's mercy pressing harder than the cold ever had.
Rest now. We'll need all our strength when the storm breaks.
I have 2 grandsons down in the valley. They always say I am too stubborn to freeze.
Sounds like you gave them reason to believe it.
Maybe. When this clears, I'd like to tell them about the boy who proved them right.
Samuel looked away, uncomfortable with the gratitude, and fished a strip of dried jerky from his pocket.
It's not much, but it'll keep your stomach from chewing on itself.
Hank took the jerky with shaking fingers, chewing slowly. The salt and smoke, a small miracle. Scrap nudged Samuel's hand, and the boy tore off a tiny piece, pressing it into the dog's mouth. Outside, the blizzard scream softened to a steady moan, the wind no longer hammering the hay.
The storm is starting to break. We might just make it to morning.
For a long while, neither spoke. The hollow held its fragile warmth, 2 lives suspended in the frozen night. The first pale light of morning pierced the hay, falling in thin golden lines across Hank's face. Then, muffled by snow, came voices, calling Hank's name, distant but urgent.
They're out searching. Even Colt came. For a man, he said wouldn't make it. Hank, wake up. There are men outside calling for you.
Already? The storm must have passed. I can barely believe I'm still here.
Samuel crawled to the entrance and pushed aside the plug of hay. Cold, clean air rushed in. 3 figures were trudging through the deep snow. Colt at the lead, his voice sharp against the stillness.
Hank Muller, answer me. You better not be frozen out here.
So now they worry. After slamming the door in my face and calling me a field mouse.
Hank pulled himself beside Samuel and peered out. The rescue party was only 100 yards away. Hank crawled out into the blinding white, Samuel steadying his arm, the storm's wreckage of snowdrifts all around.
Over here, we're alive.
The 3 farmhands stopped dead in the snow, Colt's jaw dropping open as if he'd seen a ghost.
That's impossible, Hank.
Not impossible. This boy here pulled me from the whiteout. That haystack kept me warmer than the feeling finished naturally.
Samuel said nothing, his face smudged with dirt and frost, but his eyes were steady. The other hands looked from Hank to Colt, then back to the haystack, a dark temple in the snow.
You all laughed at him for burrowing like a field mouse. That burrow saved my life.
Colt's mouth opened, but no words came. He stood frozen, not from cold, but from something harder. And in that moment, the haystack was no longer a pile of straw. It was the only reason Hank Muller was still breathing.
I didn't just guess. People have been burrowing into haystacks for centuries.
He described the old woodcut he'd seen as a child. Travelers sealed inside a haystack, smiling, while a blizzard raged.
An old traveler taught me that when the cold comes, a haystack is warmer than any house.
Hank nodded, the memory of that warm chamber still in his bones. Colt's face, already raw from the storm, flushed a deeper red. He stared at the snow.
Sealed tight. Hay holds heat better than any log wall. I learned that when I had nothing.
He knew more than we did. That haystack stayed warm while we froze in the bunkhouse.
One of the other hands scratched his neck. Never would have thought of it, he muttered.
All those old stories, they kept me alive more than any coin ever could.
A quiet fell over the snowfield. Colt turned his back, jaw locked. He had no words. Hank turned to Colt, his voice low, but carrying across the snow.
You called him a field mouse. That field mouse pulled me from the storm. You owe him more than silence.
Colt's shoulders tightened, but he didn't turn around.
That haystack kept me warmer than any bunkhouse. The boy knew what we didn't. That deserves respect.
The 2 other farmhands exchanged glances and nodded, their breath clouding in the cold.
I didn't do it for respect, but I won't deny, it feels like the cold has finally let go.
Say something, Colt. Even if it's just, you were right.
Colt's jaw worked, but the words wouldn't come. He seemed to be chewing on something bitter. Samuel shifted on his feet, then spoke quietly, more to himself than anyone. Colt finally turned, his face a mask of stubborn pride, and walked away toward the bunkhouse without a word. Colt stopped halfway to the bunkhouse, his shoulders sagging. He turned slowly, his voice grudging.
Maybe you were clever. Most would have froze.
Samuel gave a short nod, more to himself than to Colt, and said nothing.
Come inside, Samuel. We'll get the fire going again. We owe you that much.
Warmth inside those walls. Would it taste like charity? Or like something earned?
Samuel looked at the haystack, then at the bunkhouse. The choice felt heavier than the snow.
I'll think on it. For now, I need to check the lamp. Don't let it burn the hay.
Suit yourself, but the door's open when you are ready.
The other farmhands shuffled toward the bunkhouse, their breath still white in the morning air. Samuel stayed by the haystack, Scrap pressing against his leg, watching the men go. He crouched in the hollow, rolling his spare shirt and the crust of bread into his coat.
One more night. The hay doesn't ask for thanks, and it doesn't make me feel like a beggar.
Outside, Hank retraced his steps, carrying something wrapped in cloth. He set it, just inside the tunnel, where the boy couldn't miss it, and turned away without a sound. Samuel heard a rustle at the entrance. When he peered out, the bundle was there. He unwrapped the cloth and found a worn wool blanket, softer than his own.
This old man, he gave me his own blanket. The one thing that still carries his warmth.
Samuel stood at the haystack's mouth, blanket draped over his arm, watching the distant bunkhouse.
Maybe there's more than one kind of warmth.
He climbed back inside, the blanket heavy with a gratitude he'd never expected. Later that morning, Samuel crawled out of the haystack and rolled his meager belongings into a tight bundle.
The road's clear enough now. It's time to find my own way.
But as he straightened, a shadow fell across the snow. Colt stood there, alone, his face a battle of pride and regret. Without a word, he thrust a small leather pouch toward the boy. The offering was rough, like the man himself. Samuel took it, feeling the weight of dried meat. He understood the gift for what it was.
An apology would have been hollow. This was real.
Their eyes met. Colt's jaw was tight, but something had shifted. A crack had formed. Then he turned and walked away, his boots crunching in the frozen snow, not looking back. Samuel watched him go, then tucked the pouch into his coat, a quiet peace settling over him. It was enough. A door that had been slammed shut had, for a moment, opened. He slung the bundled coat over his shoulder and whistled low. Scrap bounded to his side, tail wagging.
Not a goodbye, just a leaving. I'll carry what they gave me.
From the bunkhouse window, a shadow moved. Hank's gnarled hand lifted in a slow, silent farewell. At the barn door, Colt leaned against the frame, his arms crossed. He did not wave, but he did not look away. Samuel lifted his own hand in return, a tacit acknowledgement of the two men who had, in their own ways, come to respect him. Then he turned and began to walk, the packed snow crunching beneath his worn boots. Scrap trotted ahead, sniffing at the fresh tracks, his breath puffing white in the cold air. The haystack receded behind them, a dark giant against the white field, its hollow still carrying the warmth of a boy's wisdom. Samuel did not look back again. He fixed his eyes on the road ahead, each step a small defiance of the winter that had tried to claim him. And somewhere, in the distance, a dog barked, and the sound was not of loneliness, but of a journey beginning. Samuel left that winter, but his story did not. The haystack stood like a dark sentinel, and every man who had witnessed that morning carried the tale. Hank, over the years, would recount it to anyone who'd listen. How a boy with nothing burrowed into straw and found a warmth no cabin could match. Colt, in his own grudging way, would mutter that the orphan knew something they should have remembered, something older than any of them. The old woodcut Samuel described resurfaced in the talk, a simple truth from travelers long dead reborn in a teenager's survival. In the bunkhouse, when the winter wind howled, the men would glance at that dark tower and remember what it had done. A haystack, properly hollowed, could keep a man alive when walls failed. Their laughter turned to warning, passed from hand to hand. And though Samuel's name never made it into any ledger, the field mice of winter knew who to thank for that rediscovered warmth. The woodcut, shared around, became a symbol, not of poverty, but of the wisdom that costs nothing, lying in wait for those who listen. The boy was gone, but his gift remained. Buried in the straw that had once been mocked, a pocket of still air that held the truth. In the winter that followed, and all the winters after, the story became a quiet part of the land, the legend of the haystack that stayed warmer than any house. Samuel's name never appeared in any church register or county deed. He passed through that winter like a ghost, leaving only the faintest trail. But among the men who worked those frozen fields, the lesson he left behind was worth more than any written record. A haystack, properly hollowed and sealed, will keep a man alive when four walls and a roof won't. That truth was older than the farms themselves. The farmhands who had mocked him never forgot. Every winter after, when the first blizzard came, someone would recall the orphan and his dog. Colt never spoke a full apology, but he became the first to tell newcomers, "If the storm traps you, find a haystack." The boy knew, so will you. And somewhere, walking a road far from that farm, Samuel carried their grudging respect with him, the weight of it lighter than the heaviest snow. The haystack remained, year after year, a dark tower against the white, silently offering its wisdom to any who dared to listen. Not every survivor defeats winter. Some simply learn where the wind cannot find them, and teach others the same. The boy who had nothing gave them the simplest of truths. A pocket of still air is enough. And in the great silence after the storm, that pocket of air became the most valuable thing a man could own. The sun sank low over the empty field, setting the haystack alight with a cold fire. Inside, the little lamp had burned itself out, leaving only the scent of warm straw. Far down the road, a single bark cut the silence, a sharp, bright note. The sound echoed across the snow, a fleeting reminder of the boy and his dog. Then silence again, deep and still, as the world held its breath. The haystack stood mute, still holding the memory of warmth against the darkening sky. Samuel was gone, but his wisdom remained, passed into the hands that would need it. On the coldest nights that followed, men thought of that pocket of still air, and in the hollow where a boy once curled with his dog, there was only silence. The wind blew, the snow drifted, but the truth endured. A pocket of still air, and enough